Hi, hi everyone.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Sarah McIntyre, Acting Program Manager of Board and Strategic Services at OPL, and it is my great pleasure to be introducing this evening's event. Kwe Kakina. Hello, everyone. It's important to acknowledge that we are hosting this program this evening from the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. Many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples now live, work, and study in this territory. Ottawa Public Library is delighted for the opportunity to highlight emerging adult authors. This fall, OPL is bringing to the forefront authors who have included humor in their books. We invite you to join us for our next event on Thursday, September 23rd, with author Uzma Jalaluddin. Please visit OPL's website or social media channels for more details. This evening, we are pleased to have with us author and screenwriter Ben Philip, who will discuss with us his memoir, Sure, I'll Be Your Black Friend. Ben Philip was born in Haiti and raised in Montreal. He holds a bachelor's degree from Columbia University and a Master of Fine Arts in Fiction and Screenwriting from the University of Texas. His debut YA novel, The Field Guide to the North American Teenager, won the William C. Morris Award. He's covered media and culture for Vanity Fair, Observer, the AV Club, The Guardian, Thrillist, and a couple of other publications as well. He currently resides in New York City, where he teaches at Barnard College and writes for television. In his latest book, Sure, I'll Be Your Black Friend, Ben humorously explores topics both light and heavy, universal and deeply personal, which reveal incisive truths about the need for connection in all of us. I hope this unique conversation will encourage us to expand our minds and broaden our perspectives as a community, all while sharing a laugh. Sure, I'll Be Your Black Friend by Ben Philip is available to borrow at OPL. Again, thank you to everyone here this evening. And finally, it's my pleasure to welcome our special guest. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Philippe, and I'm the author of Sure, I'll Be Your Black Friend, Notes from the Underground. No, that is not what the title is. Oh my God, sorry. I have Dostoevsky on the mind. Notes from the Other Side of the Fist Bump. This is going to be a very conversational evening for all of us. In regular times, I would hopefully be there in person, and we'd be able to sort of, I don't know, feel the room and have a fun face-to-face conversation. But, you know, the age of laptops and cameras. So right off the bat, I want to say, if you have any questions for me, there are two ways of getting them through the system that's been set up. The first one is with the Q&A section of the Zoom chat right here. Not the chat, but the Q&A, the one right to the far right. And also through the Facebook comments. So if there's anything you would like to know, I'm kind of an open book to a problematic degree. Feel free to do it that way and I will answer. Yeah, I will repeat that again a little later. In the meantime, I'll start by, talking a little bit about this book. It's a memoir, and my background has always been in sort of young adult fiction. I really like writing books for young people. I'm a teacher. I'm emotionally stunted, so writing books that can have a full arc and live within a high school always felt really, really right. And at some point in my life, I started to hear something very, very often. I would write a book. I've only written two, but I would write one. It would be out in the world, and people would give me the compliment, because it's a very nice compliment, that, oh my God, reading this book was like spending, 300 pages inside your head. It's like, this is your voice. And I'm like, oh, thank you so much for enjoying the book, but I don't think that's my voice. I really don't. So my protagonists for both The Field Guide to the North American Teenager and Charming as a Verb, they're Black, they're male, they're a little snarky. They like to sort of like keep people at a distance, and they use dialogue, either humor or just being smart in the case of Henry, to keep people at bay. And those things are all things I would say that I share as a human being. But I always thought like, no, I feel like Ben's voice is different. to be a monster and talk about myself in the third person for a split second there. I always feel like if I were to write about myself, it would sound different. And eventually I got that comment, like, oh, it's like being in your head. Oh, it's like being in your head. So many times that I just decided to just try writing from inside my own head. What would Ben sound like? So I wrote a few essays about life, about the world in 2020 at that point. And 2 essays became 7 essays, became like 28 essays. And that is how this book was born. And it's very different from my YA books. I've heard everything from you overshare, you think you're hot, beep, which I don't think I do, but that might have come across. I don't want to sort of like judge people's reading experiences. You're deeply insecure, very true, but I think that's a plus when you're writing a memoir. To you're very, very angry. And I know some people who've read my YA books were like, oh, I did not expect you to be this angry. Where did this anger come from? And I think, anger is a gift, to quote a very good YA book. And it's all part of the same voice. I think people who are funny, which is my attempt always when I write, they write about the world around them, right? They sort of try to sort of put it all into context, put it all into perspective. And the world requires a little bit of anger sometimes. It requires a little bit of sadness sometimes. So I always say, as a broad umbrella to people who love humor or are considering writing in the humor genre, don't feel like you have to always be funny. All the other emotions that aren't sort of like, hey, everybody, you'll never guess what happened at Rachel and Monica's today. All those other emotions can feed your humor. They can feed your snark. They can feed your wit. So humor is an umbrella for the entire spectrum of human feelings. So that is how we ended up with this humorous book that is also, according to some, a little dark, a little heavy, a little political, dare I say. But if you've read it, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're considering reading it, I have just about 15 minutes to convince you to do just that. I will start by reading an excerpt from the book. Now, I know. I've been to readings where there are like 4 authors and they each read for 20 minutes. And by the end, everybody's like, I like books. I like authors. This is a lot. This is a lot right now. I promise you, my excerpt is very, very short. It just gives you a taste, hopefully, of what it's like to be in my head, since this is more or less spending 300 pages in it. So it's an excerpt from chapter 27, deep into the book. But I think it's a decent like snapshot of my life. Chapter 27, smile through it. I'm 24 and sitting in an empty classroom of the UT Austin campus, a good 38 minutes before the fiction workshop is set to start. I like to give myself time to hike across campus and recover from desiccating in the Texan sun. I also do not want to give Jake the satisfaction of thinking his workshop feedback, always both blunt and sharp all at once, is causing me to break a sweat. Hacks sweat. Authors stay cool under pressure. Jane Williams walks in a few moments later, an early bird too. Jane is a powerhouse in the sense that she had already published a novel before joining the program, which is a climb to Everest to those of us who haven't yet to be published. We rarely talk, but today I say something or other, and Jane laughs. So a conversation tumbles. You're actually not standoffish at all, are you? She notes with that hint of a polished Southern twang. What do you mean, I ask. She shrugs. Well, you always have a fight face on, but then you talk and it's like, oh, hi, Ben. She mimics unexpectedly bumping into someone and looking delighted at the surprise. The conversation stays with me. That night, I stand in front of the mirror, practicing my face. I stretch my neck, studying its angles. I put tin foil over my teeth, flattening them with my tongue to make them look like grills, while I frown and grimace. Street Ben, Thug Ben, Tugnificent Ben, Lil B. Phil from the Great North. Eventually, my gums start to bleed. I try on a t-shirt and then a dress shirt to see if there's a notable difference in approachability. There is. Jane is right. My face on neutral could be perceived as being mean. I want to say defiant, but perhaps just unlikable. Amazing cheekbones, though. Credit where credit is due, old man. This isn't a Black thing, it's a Ben thing. A part of me wonders if this was what Jolene had first spotted across that party 2 years before in New York City. This won't do. A resting bitch face is a luxury for white girls. It only makes me a creature in the night. I resolve to practice smiling more often. Not simply raising the corners of my face, but a goofier, even more harmless smile. One that wrinkles my forehead upward like a St. Bernard. I train myself to default to this smile, even at rest. It's my personal sphincter tightening Kegel exercise. Distantly, I wonder if all this face stretching will age me faster, but ultimately decide, after coming up with a satisfyingly pleasant expression, that it may save my life. Being Black and looking mean in this country could kill you, or at the very least, keep you very lonely. I seek to avoid both. Smile, boy. After all, Black don't crack. And we'll leave it there. See? Told you it wasn't going to be too long. But I think this excerpt of the book sort of like intersects a lot of things about my life, which is always a good place to start the conversation. I'm a Black person, bravely, all my life, sort of like since birth, I've been dealing with the Black thing. I'm not expected to go away, nor would I want it to. I've studied writing, which has taken me from Haiti, where I was born, to Canada, Montreal, where I was raised, to New York City, to Texas, which also kind of like contributes to explaining this wonderful, weird accent you're all glimpsing right now. So this chapter gives you a brief, moment of my life in which I reflected about like what that means to be a Black person, to sort of try to make friends, to be in a new place. And it came from a place of loneliness because I lived in Texas and I hadn't really made any friends. Now, you can say that, hey, Ben, is it because you're weird and annoying? Yes, probably, but I've been weird and annoying in other places in my life and I made friends there. So it was just a moment of interrogation for me. I was really trying to sort of like figure out how I presented myself to the world, which I think is my big anxiety. Like after you've written a few books, you start to see like, oh, those 4 things show up in all my books. And those 4 things are me as a person. They're my essence. And I think one of those 4 pillars is that I'm never quite sure how I present to the world. I always think like, oh, I wish I was, I don't know, taller, skinnier, prettier, all that stuff. So I think that anxiety feeds a lot of my writing. And all my characters feel like they're people who don't quite fit into their own skins. If you're hearing a wonderful alarm right now, it's because it's a siren actually, because I live in New York City and right next to a firehouse. The rent is good, but occasionally you might hear a siren. So apologies for that. But yeah, I think sort of questioning how I present it to the world was always a huge part of my ongoing journey to just figure life out. And I did that through writing. I really, really love writing. It's my favorite thing to do in the world. I know that's deeply eye-rolling to a lot of people. I process the world by writing. That doesn't have to be sort of like I go into a cabin and write a full novel every summer. It can just be that you tweet a lot, you read a lot of books, you send long text messages to your friends. I think the way I processed the world was by writing about it. I was a shy, awkward kid, and just like the written word was where I felt powerful, where I could like, I had to smile because I was a child of immigrants, so I had to smile through everything. I had to get good grades. Where was I on a Saturday at 10 p.m.? I was at home all through middle school and high school, but at home in my diaries, in the fan fiction I was writing, I could be anywhere. I could be in animes I loved. I could just be writing hate letters that I never sent out to my bullies at school. I could do anything from the confine of the blank page. And, how are you not going to fall in love with that form of expression? So I know that there are a lot of people here tonight who are writers, who are looking for, dare I say, insight into how to write. And I'm an open book. I'm here to answer your questions. So as they come in, I will take them. And now my screen is frozen. All right. I'm just gonna text someone very, very quickly to ask if I'm frozen because I'm not moving on the screen in front of me. Okay, I just had to text. Hopefully it's one of those situations where like the screen is frozen for me, but like the data is still streaming through for all of you. I'm just going to keep talking. Oh, I just got the text back that I am frozen. All right. So, we're going to do this live, to quote Bill O'Reilly from that weird viral video. You can still hear me. All right. So what I'm going to try to do is leave the Zoom and come right back to this channel. And hopefully that will fix things. Does that sound like a good plan? Courtney? Ed? Hi.
That sounds fine.
Okay.
If you want to turn off your camera and then turn it back on, that might also work.
So you've all just been seeing like this frozen rictus of me with my hands like half flailing.
But you sound really good.
Okay, well, honestly, if I have to choose, I would always pick like looking good before, but all right, I will do this right now. Bear with us, people. We're so sorry, but this is how, technology fails us all. All right, so I'm gonna try to leave and try to come back, all right? Yeah.
Hi, everyone. We're just having a little bit of technical difficulties. Just be patient with us while we get Ben back up. He just sent me a message that he is loading back up, so hopefully very soon. If anybody has any questions, this is a good time to use the Q&A function, which is found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So if you have any questions about writing, about his latest book, feel free.
Marco Polo.
Welcome back.
Oh my God, can I move? You can hear me, which is good. Can you see me?
You look and sound great. Keep going.
Okay, amazing. Sorry about that, folks. Now you're gonna see me move and you're also gonna see some sweat pits because technology is stressful, really. I'm trying to think of like what would the in-person equivalent of this be. And I think it would just be like, if I had to use the bathroom really quickly and I had to like run off stage. But I am back. And I will ask if there are any questions now and start answering those. Or I can keep talking about myself, really, and like the entire writing journey. I have a whole thing going. Oh, all right, first question. Hi, Fiona. Am I working on anything right now? Yes, right now I'm a TV writer, which is very, very awesome. I write for a show on Hulu called Only Murders in the Building. With Selena Gomez, Steve Martin, Martin Short. It's my dream job. It's a thing I've been trying to do sort of on top of publishing books for a long time. So I'm very, very happy to be doing that. I'm also still trying to write novels. I miss writing teenagers. Nonfiction, I've written this book. It has literally 30 years of my life in it. So I have to live the next 30 years before I write the next one, right? That's how memoirs go. So I think I'm going to step away from nonfiction for a while, but I do want to go back to writing teenagers because I think people really underestimate the teenage genre, the YA genre. From the marketing perspective, like those books sell, gross as that is to say, people read them. Teenagers in libraries and young people, adults read those books. There's always a demand for it. I think teenagers are a lot smarter than we tend to give them credit for. Those books wrestle with politics, they wrestle with sort of identity, they wrestle with the world around us. They're really sort of like books of the moment. And I always say that like, oh, Jane Austen was a YA author for her era. So, you know, don't sleep on YA. And I'm hoping that my next one will also be a young adult. But this one is gonna be a little fun. It's gonna be like a murder mystery because those are truly my favorite books. I just reread all of the Agatha Christie books, not all of them, just a lot of Poirot and a handful of Marples, not the short stories. I just reread them all this summer. I think I was a little depressed, but anyway. But yes, I'm hoping that my next book will be a murder mystery set in the YA genre. How did you break into publishing? Write first or get a commission? I don't know exactly what a commission is, but I will tell you the gory story of how I broke into publishing. It started with me getting an MFA and thinking I was like the voice of my generation. I wrote a collection of very, very bad short stories, but I really sort of hate the whole thing. Like, I have a degree in writing. They're gonna give me $50,000 and I'm gonna move into like a small but cute apartment in Brooklyn and be like the full-time writer I was born to be. That's not really how it happened. My collection of short stories, I should say, was very, very bad. I was 24, leave me alone. So I got an agent because of the MFA, and she submitted on my behalf to, I believe it was something like 18 publishing houses. She submitted the manuscript on a Friday, and by Monday, 17 had said no, and by Tuesday, all 18 had said no. So I had to move to New York without like a fancy book deal. I worked in marketing for a while. I worked as a paralegal for a while. For the longest time, like what I was writing most were, you know, cover letters for jobs to just find a way to keep making a living. But because of that, actually, that's the reason why I started to write YA, because I stopped writing something that would sell. I think that's always like you pick up a book, you see the author's bio, you're like, okay, how did this person get there? I have a story too. How do I get there? And you try to reverse engineer it. It doesn't work that way. At least it didn't work that way for me. Write something you're passionate about. Chances are it will be better than you writing something you're not passionate about. Whenever I'm like, okay, I need to write my next book. What's going to be a bestseller? You know, my agent is very nice and very honest, and she'll be like, well, you know what? Stories set in around Christmas always sell. And then I don't have a single story to tell around Christmas. So I just say, write what you really want to write. And in my case, when I was working in marketing, like 45 hours a week, writing had to be fun. And the fun story that emerged was Field Guide to the North American Teenager, a story about a Black teenager moving to Texas and trying to fit in and being very snarky. And that was the one that I was passionate about. It sold as a partial, meaning that like I had written about half of it, and that half sold along with an outline of the full book. And nothing will motivate you to like finish your manuscript faster than like selling the first half, and they don't give you the money yet, and you don't like your day job. So I finished it, and that was my first breakthrough sale. I'll answer any questions about that stuff because, all right, here's a little tangent. I think authors we don't like to lie a lot, but we end up lying a lot about our path into becoming a writer. We're like, oh yeah, when I was 12 years old, I used to have a diary. I love reading. We love to talk about that stuff. But the nitty gritty stuff, like hey, I have 300 submissions on Submittable and they were all rejected. How do I move forward? We don't like to talk about that because that's like highlighting your failures. And why would you highlight your failures where it's always better to highlight your successes? I like to highlight my failures. I think that's more useful. if y'all want to talk about breakups too, I'll highlight those too. Someone might learn something. I didn't. But yes, that was my process in getting my first book. And my first book was a 2-book deal, which means that like, if your book sells enough and they like you, they'll ask you for a second manuscript. So that was my journey into the published author world. Next question by Miranda Gray. What is the difference in process in writing YA and adult? Content or ... Ooh, very good question, Miranda. YA now covers everything. It is like contemporary, real people, genes, cell phones, to like fantasy, to like genre stuff, Westerns, aliens, murder mysteries, whatever you want. YA covers it all. There are 2 rules to YA. Your protagonist has to be a teenager. So typically you want a character that's under 18. And it can be as superficial, quote unquote, of a change as like, oh, your character was going to be in college. Well, put them at a boarding school. And, you know, you age them down by 2 years. Now they're a YA protagonist. And the second requirement is looser. I feel like the age of the protagonist is the big golden rule. You can't have a young adult book with a protagonist who is like in their 30s. I don't think I've seen that. I could be wrong. But really, the second rule is that you can't write content that is too explicit. And that mostly means sex. But I have seen YA books that really deal with sexuality very openly. Like, I just think you can't be too graphic about it. And again, someone might point to a dozen like young adult books that deal with sexuality, but I've always known that those were the 2 big rules. You can deal with drugs, strangely enough. Like, there are a lot of amazing YA books, like Heroin by Mindy McGinnis, which deals with like heroin addiction, and it's still a YA book. So that is typically the big, you know, difference between YA and adult markets, truly. And if you write in YA, actually, you'll have a lot of adult readers. Like, all the podcasts I did when my books were first coming out were with adults and just librarians and teachers. So if you have that protagonist that's a young person in you, feel free to write them. More questions. Also, you people are being very polite with the questions, because I will answer everything. No one's even asked me like, how much did you make selling your first book? That's not that you have to ask me that, because I overshare, but you know, feel free to ask anything. New question. Do you use experiences from people you know that are close to you? If so, how do you feel about wanting to tell a good story / how important story element about, do you use experiences from people you know that are close to you? The answer is yes. I'll explore that a little bit more. And if so, how do you deal with people wanting to tell a good story and also the philosophy of privacy? All right. I'm very selfish about my writing. So my philosophy, I've said this a few times now, is that if something happened to me, it's mine. I get to write about it. Meaning, if I go to a party and there's some messy fight happening, I get to write about that without asking for the permission of everyone who was at that party to write about it. And they also get to write about what happened at that party and write about me in their own books. And that might not be like the right way of writing a story, but I've always been very, very selfish about my writing. That was never really a problem in the young adult fiction side of things. Field Guide to the North American Teenager, there's a character named Artie. Artie was based on my friend Artie. I loved her name. I asked her for her permission in using it. She was like, heck yes. So when I was writing fiction, it was a very sort of permeable, easy thing to do. It bit me in the butt just a little bit when I started to write nonfiction. Because the truth is, all my friends, all my family are deeply unimpressed with me and my writing, because before I used to write for young people and didn't really read those books. So I was shocked to my core when I would sort of like go for dinner with friends and they'd be like, hey, so I read your new book. What's the deal with the character of Marty in chapter 3? That's me, right? And I would just be like, oh, this is what people were talking about with that question about sort of like respecting the privacy of others. And then I would sort of sweat a lot and explain to my friend why I wrote about them in the way I did. And I think the truth isn't unimpeachable, meaning that like if you don't make other people the villains in your story, except when they're actually the villain in your story, I think you can get away with a lot. My writing is very sort of open about just being in the I mode of communication. It's my perspective. It's truly only mine. It's biased. It's very specific. So I give a full picture of who I am, but the people around me, they're sort of just like other full beings that I bump and crash into. From my enemies, who I generally think suck as people, to my friends, I don't give full-fledged portraits of their lives, but hopefully I write them in a believable way. And I try not to lie, although I do say that I lied 3 times in this book, and I do, not just for the names, like there were 3 times I lied to you in this book because of that weird boundary. Sorry, another siren. New York City. I think there are some things that I just like didn't want to write about, and it made it for a cleaner reading experience if I just told a lie. So it's not big things. I'm not like actually in Wyoming and telling the world that I live in New York City. Just, and then I did not talk to this person again, but actually 7 years later, I had a conversation with them. But if that conversation didn't really serve the story I'm telling, I'll just say like, yeah, I never talked to that person again. So little lies like that. You get to do that when you're writing about your own life. Did you see yourself in books as a young person? Well, I'm a young Black man who grew up in Canada. So the short answer is going to be, actually, no, hang on. I saw young Black characters in books. I think when we talk about diversity, sometimes the conversation becomes like, oh, see? There was no representation of who I am in books. As the short, zany Black guy, there were plenty of representations of who I was on TV shows, in movies. They just really didn't have a lot of inner life. That was always the big barrier. So the main character would have Black friends. The main character would have Black neighbors. Those people weren't at the center of the frame. And I actually think it became kind of when you're a marginalized group, it becomes kind of a superpower because you learn to project yourself at the center of the page. Meaning that when I was reading, I thought I was Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is not Black. I thought I was Rory Gilmore. Rory Gilmore is the whitest, blue-eyed woman in Connecticut. But that stopped being a barrier to me because I could just like project myself into these characters who I liked and enjoyed. And I think sometimes the reverse is not quite true. I've had parents come up to me and say that like, the book is really, really funny or really, really interesting. And I would like my children to read it, but they think because there's a Black kid on the cover, it's not really going to speak to them. That is something I got over at a very young age, because if I was just looking for Black kids on the cover, I wouldn't read those books. So I think I did not see myself represented a lot in books when I was a young person, but that became a superpower for my creative imagination. And also, I think that has changed a lot. Like if you go into a bookstore, if you go into a library, you will find many, many books with Black people on the cover, with queer people on the cover. I think diversity has had a boom in the past 10, 15 years, if it's safe to say. But those books aren't necessarily going to be the first things you see when you walk into a bookstore. So use those amazing, amazing little like buildings. Go in and find books that speak to you. You will find them, they exist. What is your process when writing about the inner life of characters from other races / culture? Research and a deft touch. A deft touch, I would say. Not daft. You can research anything, right? One of my favorite characters from Charming as a Verb, my second young adult novel, was adopted. And he's Asian American. And I really wanted that to be his identity. So I did some research. What's the adoption process like? What would be a believable story for this character if he's going to live in New York City and reside on the Upper West Side? What could his background be? At what age was he adopted? Is that believable? We have these things in our pockets now, supercomputers, Wikipedia, you know, you don't need to go to, you should go to bookstores, you should go to libraries, but you can also find a lot of information that you can double check, that is verified information, just by looking for it. So I did the bare minimum so that like my fictional stories would have a sheen of realism to them. And I also think knowing how to stay in your lane, or for me, knowing how to stay in my lane was helpful, meaning that I can talk about the inner life of a weird sort of like anxious Black character all the dong day. That is my jam. But if I'm going to talk about the inner life of a trans person that lives in Alaska, well, that's going to be fictionalized. So maybe I'm not the right person to sell a book where that's the main character on the cover. And that's not to say that some writers can't write outside their experience at all. Some people are phenomenal at doing that. I'm just not. So I tend to write Black characters, and I tend to write characters that I can identify with. And again, it's part of the whole writing being selfish for me thing. I do spend years with these characters in my head, and some level of comfort and familiarity navigating their voice feels like it's important for me. But everybody has a different process. As long as you're thoughtful about it, I think you'll be okay. Do not email me if you're canceled. I could have steered you wrong. But I think one thing that every writer, author, or aspiring writer out there has is some level of thoughtfulness about the words they're putting on a page. So just by virtue of it taking so long to write a book, to write anything. So I think if you're thoughtful about what you're doing, if you're open to feedback, and if you're open to a critical eye on your book, the good news is that these things get editors. You'll be steered in the right direction. And I think that when it comes to books, the last thing I'll say is that I did not make this thing. I don't know where you find glue to bind pages together, right? It takes a village to make a book. It truly, truly does. I did not design the cover. My friend did. I did not design the binding. I had an editor. I had someone who sort of had like the master PDF with like, I don't know, 500 pages with notes all over, who caught the grammar. They knew the difference between deft and daft. So all these people are rooting for you, the writer. They are trying to steer you in the right direction. And once you're lucky enough to have them on your side, appreciate that, consider that like a benefit as opposed to a hurdle to your genius, and trust them. They're not trying to steer you wrong, would be my experience. Do authors have to do more to spread the word today? Are you pushed to spend your energy building an audience rather than more novels? Ooh, good question. We're getting messy, people. I like this. I think in the age of social media, there is a push or an encouragement to just like, you know, use the resources you have to get the biggest platform you can. I don't think it's really sort of sinister or malicious, but like, you wrote a book, you have 300 friends, maybe take a photo of the book and like post it on Instagram for your 300 friends. It's as simple as that. And for some authors, they're just like, okay, I'm gonna chronicle every step of my writing this book. I'm gonna have like contests and really build a community around my readers, and just sort of like, I'm gonna produce content every day to keep my readers engaged, so they'll support me, so they'll become fans of my work. I don't think that's a bad thing. In fact, I really admire people who are able to do it. I'm one of those people that has Instagram and I'm like, oh, what do I post today? I don't know. I saw a cute dog earlier. Like, producing content is consuming. It's creatively consuming. And even when I was on Twitter, like writing tweets, writing blogs, writing short stories and posting them, those things all take effort. They take time. So I always say like, create the content you feel comfortable creating. I'm sure there's a matrix out there of like, you need to follow these 5,000 accounts and you're going to get 15,000 followers. You need to have raffles here, there, and there. I just kind of passively opted out of it because it feels very, very exhausting. And I prefer to spend that energy just writing or just, you know, doing stuff I enjoy. But I admire people who are able to lean into doing that stuff. I really do. Are there Black editors, or do you have to code switch to sell your book to agented? Oh, sorry. Are there Black editors, or do you have to code switch to sell your books to agents and editors? There are Black editors. If you're an author that's like, I need someone who understands my experience to understand my manuscript in order to find an editor who's going to understand my manuscript, you can find those authors. There are those gatekeepers. There are agents who are like, I'm looking for work by people of color right now, and I specialize in this genre and I tell this sort of stories and this is what's important for me that I'm trying to put into the world. I always say agents and editors are not your enemies. They're people whose days are going to revolve around your name. Like all the emails that like I never see that have my name in the subject line, they go through them. So it's important to find agents and editors that you trust and that you feel like you can have a partnership with. My agent is a white woman. My editor for my young adult book was Alessandra Belzer, who's an amazing person, one of my favorite people in the world. I really love her, and she held my hand all through the process. I was super comfortable with that. If you're not comfortable with that, find an editor you're comfortable with. I think the worst thing you can actually do is to be afraid of those people, of your agent, of your editor. My editors for this book were Black because it felt like that was kind of important for this. I was like, no, I would really like to work with a Black editor. And then I found one. They were amazing. But I think when I first started like to write professionally, I lucked out and got an agent. And I was so thrilled. I won a short story contest while I was getting my MFA. And the judge, Michael Cunningham, the Hours, referred me to his agent. And I think his agent just said, sure, I guess, because it was a favor to Michael freaking Cunningham. So she took a few of my short stories. And for a year and a half, I got the clout of saying I have the same agent as Michael Cunningham. And I didn't really hear anything from her after like 7 months, after 8 months. I was just like, oh boy, should I email her? I don't want to email her. No, I'll keep waiting. So I waited like a year. So I think like after 14 months of not hearing anything from her, I was like, hey, sorry, I don't mean to bother you at all. I know you're super busy. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to check, since like submitting my manuscript, 14 months ago, has there been anything? And her reply was like a 2-line email. I was like, oh yeah, I haven't really been working on your case at all. Because again, I'm the agent of Michael freaking Cunningham and other like built and established authors. So you should really go find another agent. And I spent over a year terrified of that conversation because I was terrified of pissing off this agent that was technically working on my behalf, at least in my head. So do not find agents and editors you're afraid of. Find people that you are honestly just comfortable with, whatever their identities are. Alessandra is someone that I can text and be like, oh my God, cute dog. Or like, ugh, I don't want to do this panel. My pants don't fit because I've gained weight and I didn't travel with the right pants. Help me, Alessandra, please. I'm comfortable with her. And I'm comfortable enough with her to do that. And I think that's been truly, truly immensely helpful for me. So find people you're not afraid of, find gatekeepers you can talk to. Are you a disciplined author working set hours, or do you write when the mood strikes? How do you deal with writer's block? Am I a disciplined writer? I'm a disciplined writer. I'm not a disciplined author, meaning that right now I'm a TV writer. When it comes to scripts, I tend to be very disciplined. I think sort of like, oh, we have a script to turn in 10 days. All right, so I'll write, 20 pages a day. I'll give myself a little leeway to edit. I really try to do the work because there are a lot of people involved, notes to get from the studio, notes to get from the showrunner, other writers in the writer's room. So I try to be really mindful of other people's time. So I'm really disciplined when it comes to work that is part of television or screenplays, fingers crossed. When it comes to my own books, I really need the push of a book deal to finish writing a manuscript. I think this was like, this sold as a partial again, which was 25,000 words. This whole thing is like 85,000, and like the full outline of what I wanted the book to be. And that was the push I needed to finish it, because if it's just me and my thoughts and, ooh, there's a new season of a TV show I want to watch. Ooh, there's an old season of a TV show I want to watch. Oh, we're in a pandemic, I don't feel like writing. It just sort of diffuses. So I really need to be like, oh, you are accountable to other people to make this happen. But that's not a universal thing. That's just a Ben thing. Same for going to the gym. If I have a trainer that's going to yell at me, fine, I'll go to the gym. If it's just me, I'll go to the hallway and then I'll come back to bed or to the couch. That's just my process. I think the more you write, the more you become familiar with your own process, and you stop lying to yourself about it. So I think that's where I am right now. As for writer's block, I'm going to be mean, because whoever you are asking this question, I love you. My opinion is that it's not a thing. And that's not to say that you don't yell at me. I can sense you yelling at me like in the ether right now. That's not to say that you can't sometimes come to a manuscript that you've been working on for years and be on page like 273 and be like, oh, I can't write. But it's not like there's a force field that's preventing the keys you're writing from moving forward, right? If I say, hey, I'm locking all the doors in your apartment and I will only give you food if you write 500 words, you're gonna write those 500 words. So I think writer's block, because it has a name, it's something that people opt into sometimes. And I just say, power through it. For me, I know that the time in life where I get the most ideas for a new story is always when I'm like in the middle of a draft. I'm like, ooh, you know what would be really good right now? A fresh Microsoft Word blank document. I have so many ideas. I have a new notebook. I really want to start something new. And that's always because I don't want to power through it. Just force yourself to power through it. The best advice I ever got on writing was from a writing teacher during my MFA. And it was that, like, there are enough books in the world. There are enough books in the world. There are enough completed books in the world. Really, really good ones. Nobody is asking for this thing that you, and I speak to you, to Ben right now, want to put into the world. No one is like, you know, circling a Barnes and Noble waiting for a Ben Philippe book to come out. They'll be like, yeah, I like him. If he writes one, I'll check it out maybe. So you have to find the motivation within yourself to write it. And I hope you do, because I think there are amazing books out there that are never published. I think there are people who have like 300,000 words of pure fun that are sitting somewhere on their desktop, and they just like say, it's not ready yet. I submitted it to like 3 agents and they all said no, so I'm just gonna put it aside. No, submit it to like 35 more. Upload it to your website one day. I generally just don't super believe in writer's block. And part of that comes from being a teacher and having students who are like, oh, I have writer's block. I'm like, that is not my problem. The final assignment is due tomorrow. So that's where I developed this like cold exterior when it comes to writer's block. Did you notice? Oh, more questions. I'm sorry. I just ranted at this one because for a while there was like one question and I had to vamp for 5 minutes, but like the questions are popping now. All right. So did you notice a different reaction on what people thought was funny in your book based on different demographics, like from different cultures, races, genders, or ages? Yes. I don't think a lot of Black people learned anything about Blackness from my book, to be honest, right? Because if you're Black, you know the Black experience. I feel like a lot of like the humor that I thought was not for white people, but like sort of like little bits of insight into Black culture. I think, you know, audiences that aren't Black found something more out of that. Oh, I did not know what Black girl magic was. So you're gonna learn something new and hopefully fun when I write about that stuff. So I think that is something I definitely noticed in my book. I think maybe white people don't like me as much as I thought from this book, because there are chapters in it that are sort of really angry, chapters that are written during the summer of 2020. And no, I'm not talking about the Savage remix. I'm talking about like the exhausting year we had last year. And I was tired and I was angry. And I don't regret anything I've ever written in this book. I really don't. But I think there's like an angry Black person. I don't know about this. Make jokes. You should be funny right now. I thought this book was going to be funny. Sorry. And I found that like people of color, women, if I want to sort of like gender the reaction I've gotten, were a lot more empathetic to that than sort of like white men who were pissed at me just not feeling like making you laugh for the space of one essay written around the summer of Black Lives Matter. But yes, that is something I've noticed. What advice do you have for a teacher trying to encourage kids to write when writing or reading is not cool? Broaden the scope of what is acceptable. And I know that's not always easy when you're a teacher, because sometimes people are just like, no, we have a curriculum. You have to make them read The Great Gatsby. I am a 32-year-old adult who thinks The Great Gatsby sucks. My God, I do not like that book. I think it is deeply dry. I think it is really, you're just begging people to go straight to Sparks Notes, truly. But there are mangas out there, right? There are like books, and to say for young people who say that they don't like books, to me, that's always like, you're saying you don't like anything, because there are books about absolutely anything. There are graphic novels. So if you're a Marvel zombie, you can read like amazing graphic novels, and not just like Iron Man, Captain America stuff. You can read like Grant Morrison stuff that's weird, stuff that was turned into television shows, Saga by Brian K. Vaughan, Planetary. There are so many cool books out there, and they might not look like the 20 approved lit books that we all agree everyone should read, even though most people haven't read them. So I know it's hard to motivate kids, especially on a teacher's salary, believe me. But sometimes giving them a little bit of breadth in what they can choose to write or read can be helpful. Yeah. If you like writing new things, does that mean you prefer writing new characters rather than a series? Oh, yeah, I do. And, you know, no one is more upset about that than me, because those Hunger Games books keep selling. Like writers who like sell like a series, they're like, oh, cool, here's your book deal. Here's like 4 more books. I tend to lean more towards like, I've told a full story. I've lived with these characters. I love these characters. I don't need to spend any more time with them. I hope they're happy. Nothing makes me happier than like when I, out of nowhere, I'll get like a PDF from someone who read one of my books and decided to write fan fiction about it. Some teenagers do not agree with the romantic pairings I've made for like the Field Guide to the North American Teenager. They're like, actually, Norris Kaplan is gay and he's gonna end up with Eric. And I'm just like, okay, cool, go off. It makes me really happy when people are able to live in worlds. And I know that as a consumer of books, I love to live in worlds. Like, I'm gonna mention a book right now, and I know we should mention that book. But you know what? I'm taking it back. I am taking it back. The first Harry Potter changed my brain. And I'm not a Potterhead, whatever they're called. I don't have a tattoo or anything, but like, it hit me at the exact age where I was like, oh, this world exists. Like, Harry is gonna go to bed tonight, even after I'm done reading the book. It was just like an entire universe that existed within one book. And I find that to be such a magical talent for writers, and R.R. Martin with A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, and Tolkien. Like, people who are able to just like create massive worlds. And you know what? Avatar: The Last Airbender, I think, is up there too. Star Wars, you know, the original Star Wars, I'd say. I think that's such a superpower. I just do not have it. So once I'm done with the story, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty much done with the story. Yeah. I would sell more books if I wrote a series, believe me. I know this too. It hurts me too. I would like a house. Thank you for being so candid. No filters, you're welcome. Sorry for the whole freezing thing for like 3 minutes in the middle. How did you get into HBO? Does your dream job still leave creative energy to write? I got into TV the long, long way. Writing for television was always this thing I really, really wanted to do. I got my first staff job at age 31. So I got my MFA. It was in like fiction and screenwriting. After that, I entered a few contests and I won a few. I could not get traction. I moved to Los Angeles and slept on a couch for like 5 months. It kicked my butt. I did not know how to drive. There are a lot of highways in Los Angeles. So I kind of put that dream aside for a little while and I became a teacher. So I was a professor at a college and I got to teach movies and I got to teach TV, which I love, but like kept me going. And then because I wrote books in the interim, I got an agent and he trusted in me and he liked my script and I got staffed into the show, which means that the showrunner, once they come up with their idea and HBO loves it, well, in my case, it's not HBO, it's Hulu, and they love it, they're like, oh, cool. Well, writer, you have to write 10 episodes, hire 6 to 10 writers to help you write. And I was one of those writers who was hired to write. So yeah, it's my dream job. How does your dream job still leave creative energy to write? I manage my schedule, but I know how lucky I am. And I think it's because I spent like those 10 years, 8, 9 years, getting so many no's, like so many no's. There are so many editors out there whose emails I guessed, who, if they go for a search, they will have my manuscripts in there because I was just sending it to everyone. There are so many, the New Yorker can just like F off, rejected me so many times. So many scripts that just never went anywhere. So now that I'm in a space where my problem is like, do I want to make time to work on my novel that someone's probably going to buy one day, or do I want to write on a TV show? I will find a way of making it happen because I know so many people are trying to like realize those same dreams. And I know that past me would be hitting current me with a bat if I was complaining about how lucky I've been. Where do you hope to be in 15 years creatively? You've done a lot already. Aw, thank you. And I mentioned I want a house. Where do I hope to be in 15 years? I don't know. I would like to be able to, kids would be nice. Kids would be nice. I would like to be able to Google myself and be surprised by what I find. Because I think like 15 years ago when I was like 17, if I Googled myself and I saw like what I'm accomplished now, I'd be like, holy crap. How did this happen? You got into that dream college you wanted? Oh, you didn't get into that one, you got into that one. You wrote this book? Why would you write this book? I could not have mapped out how my life worked out. So I would like to keep that going. Who knows where I'll be in 15 years, but I want to be surprised and I want to keep doing that stuff that I really love. And I really love writing. And I think anyone who loves writing knows what that's the feeling, right? You're at your crappy paralegal job. No offense to paralegals who love it, but like the Word document underneath like the file or like a story you have or a novel you're working on. So I don't know. Hope I'm still around in 15 years, but I don't know. You'll be okay. You'll be okay. Kidding. That asteroid is coming in 7 years. We're all kind of screwed. But I'm not too worried about it. Life's been good. Fingers crossed. Oh boy, I've been running out the clock. I am so sorry. If I'd known there would be questions, I would not have talked so much about myself in the opening sections. Our next event, yes. Thank you so much for everyone who hosted me today. Thank you to Miranda. Thank you to Courtney. Oh, I'm forgetting some names. I'm sorry, but like you've been great. You've helped me deal with the crumbling infrastructures of technology we all rely on. Our next event is going to be on Thursday, September 23rd with Uzma Jaludin. Oh, I am so sorry. I am butchering that pronunciation. The author of Hannah Khan, Carries, and she'll be discussing her rom-com inspired by the movie You've Got Mail. Oh, classic movie, which is set between two rival halal restaurants. There's a link to register in the chat room right now. And yeah, check it out. Honestly, the great thing about authors is that we all get very chatty and we all have different information to give. So please check it out, September 23rd. Uzma's great. Sign up at the link in the chat room. Thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for pretending not to see the sweat pits happening right now. You've been so great, whether it's on like Facebook, whether it's here on Zoom. Thanks for bearing with me. Hope I answered your question. Hope it was remotely useful. Hope you'll check out my book. Yeah, please do. And if you're a writer, I hope you'll keep writing. Really, please keep writing. No one is gonna like force you to keep writing, but keep doing it. It's great. It's great. There are crappier writers than you writing out there. I might be one of those. So please keep doing it. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.